We're back in here. Haven't been in here for a while. Feels weird. My voice isn't echoing as much. However, there are more sounds of nature. We're in a natural setting here because we've got a big pond outside and everything. And welcome to Homebrew Kitchen, where I make stuff and then I talk about it. I've already made the thing, as usual, and hopefully Laura will be doing some epic editing tricks to make the video more interesting to watch. In any case, welcome. Today is about a subclass. Whatever I'm going to be making for, like, you know, players or DMs, I'm always going to provide like links to stuff that you can use for like D&D Beyond. So you'll be able to find the subclass I'm going to be talking about in the description because Laura's amazing and she's put it in there. So I made a Warlock subclass. It is called the Blizzard. It's a remix of a concept I had a while ago called the Land, which is kind of like a Warlock patron, except a bit, you know, druidy, if you get what I mean. Like, got a bunch of druid stuff, so they could use a few actions to mold the earth around them, etc, etc. This is like a subsection of it, focused on icy type stuff. And I want to try and make some more like specific subclasses instead of just generalizing stuff so that people can go wild with a few more wacky concepts that they might have. And the Blizzard is definitely one of them. The patron can be anything icy, right? I tried to keep that somewhat vague, but make it icy. They could be like the most powerful ice elemental in the world. It could be like you're a weird-ass cultist that worships a blizzard, etc, etc. Anything that would give you the powers to harness the cold, basically. And that's basically the flavor I wanted. I tried to only really write like a paragraph so that you can kind of go wild with that. With it, like you could even just have been born in a blizzard and now I am a warlock of the blizzard, I do not understand my patron, etc, etc. First off, you get an expanded spell list, which I believe all warlock subclasses do. Most of them at least, maybe not the ones in the player's handbook. It will expand the list of spells that you can take normally as a warlock and add to your spell list. However, I did it a little bit differently. Similar to the vein of how Tasha's handled their two new sorcerer subclasses, I've decided to give the Warlock some always known spells with this subclass, similar to how a cleric, paladin, and ranger get theirs. This might be a controversial take because of what I've done, but I feel like those sorts of classes need more spells, if you know what I mean. So I made a 5th level Warlock this morning. They only have 6 spells, whereas another class could prepare like 10 or 15 or 13 by that level. And it definitely feels like you're lagging behind in a lot of different elements, so I thought, why not give them 2 spells every 2 levels? How about that? That'll be fun. So I did exactly that. So to start off with a little bit of a less controversial thing, some subclasses do this, they get a free cantrip, Ray of Frost. It's not on the Warlock spell list, so I decided, here, have it, because a lot of the kit here is designed around you doing cold damage, believe it or not, as the Blizzard. So basically how it works is at 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th and 9th level, when a primary spellcaster learns their new spell levels, they will get 2 spells at that level of that level, basically. So for instance, when you choose this subclass, you will always have prepared Absorb Elements and Ice Knife. Neither of these scale too well for the late game, but cool to have for the early game, I think at least. So Absorb Elements is like a reaction and you become resistant to a damage type. I think that makes sense. It's pretty situational. Like, I think it's like just some of the more elemental stuff. Cold's in there, so. And then there's also Ice Knife, which I believe can scale with spell level, but not that well, if you know what I mean. At 3rd level, they'll get Dust Devil and Gust of Wind, both spells that people look at and think, or I could just take Misty Step, which honestly I've done that too. But Dust Devil is like a small localized mini whirlwind, and Gust of Wind is a big old line of wind that really fucks over things in corridors and stuff, which is great. I love that. And it knocks everything prone and stuff like that. I got to use it once as a paladin. In Eberron they had a magic item that was like some mechanical lungs or something, and he could just breathe real frickin' hard and cast a gust of wind once a day. At 5th level, they'll get access to Protection from Energy and Sleet Storm. Most of these spells do not scale well with Warlock level, but trust me, it's worth it. Protection from Energy basically gives anyone resistance to a bunch of damage types for up to an hour, as long as you're concentrating. And Sleet Storm makes a big old Sleet Storm. Not sure if it does that much damage. I think it's mainly like concentration breaking and obscuring, etc, etc. At 7th level they'll get Ice Storm, which is Sleet Storm but Chad version, and Stone Skin. But, you know, you could flavour it as, ha, my skin's icy now. Stone Skin gives you resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing while you're concentrating. And at 9th level, you'll get Cone of Cold and Control Winds. I'm leaning into both like the wind and ice part of the blizzard, in case you can't tell. So there's Cone of Cold, which is 8d8 of cold damage in a 60-foot cone. That's fucking good. And Control Winds, where, you know, you control the winds. You can force it to go in all sorts of specific directions and do a bunch of cool-ass tricks with it. I think it's a neat spell. So the line of thinking for this sort of stuff was that, honestly, for me at least, whenever I'm making a new character and I want to make, like, you know, a Warlock or a Bard, I think, yeah, or I could just make them a Cleric that worships a god and is just better, right? Because they get extra spells. That's the main lure of it to me in comparison to the other ones, because clerics get so many and then the charisma casters and are just really lagging behind, so give them some extra spells for the road, you know? So, first level other feature, Icy Wrath. If you deal cold damage to a creature, it reduces their speed by 10 feet. This works really well with Ray of Frost or other similar cold slowing spells. Like Ray of Frost will slow a creature's movement by 20 feet, so it really incentivizes you using a cantrip other than Eldritch Blast. So say if you use Cone of Cold and some things succeed on the save and some things fail, they only have their movement speed reduced by 5 feet. If they succeed on the saving throw, or they're like resistant, if they're immune then nothing happens, obviously. If they're resistant and save as well, that's up to the DM to decide whether they still get their movement speed reduced by 5 or none, because frankly I wasn't really sure where to put that, and I can't exactly make movement speed reduced by 2.5 feet. That will confuse things way too much. That's up to DM interpretation. I think that this definitely incentivizes the Blizzard Warlock to use their cold stuff more and, you know, not spam Eldritch Blast, which is the temptation here. It always is, especially the frickin' invocation that lets you add your charisma modifier to damage. Whew! Oh, that could have been a good idea. I could have added charisma modifier to damage on this. Don't worry, I have similar things. At 6th level, which is the next level that you get a Warlock feature, I made Debilitating Aura. Now, the same level that a Paladin would get their aura, except I made it so that they can put the aura on an ally, because sometimes people don't build Hexblade Warlocks type stuff. I only exclusively do that when I play a Warlock. Sometimes people don't do that, because Warlocks inherently are like slightly more martial in comparison to the other spellcasters, but they're still, you know, spellcasters, primary ones. So it's unlikely that they're always going to be built like a tank. So I thought, you can use a bonus action to give someone else within 30 feet of you this 10-foot aura. So you can also make a bunch of creatures around you immune to it so that your allies don't get fucked in the ass by it. It becomes difficult terrain for anyone that you haven't selected to be fine, which is cool. Further reduces their movement speed, which is definitely a thing that I wanted to hone in on, because, you know, Blizzards reduce movement speed normally in real life and in the game. And if a creature in the aura takes cold damage, not even from you, this can be from anyone dealing cold damage, they need to make a con save against, you know, Warlock spell save DC, but I couldn't make that happen in D&D Beyond, so instead it's just 8 plus proficiency plus charisma modifier. So it can't be modified by, like, if you get a Rod of the Pact or whatever, if that's what it's called. And if they fail the saving throw, they can't take reactions, and on their next turn they need to take an action, bonus action, or movement, and they only get one of the 3. Similar to the 2nd level spell, Mind Spike. I think that this is pretty cool. It has a 1 use and comes back on a short rest, and it once again really incentivizes you to use that frickin' cold damage that this subclass gives you a load of. Ultimately, I definitely wanted to hone in on the Blizzard surrounding enemies and slowing them down and making them, like, less useful. This is a whole bunch of debuff stuff for this Warlock. I wanted to give them more than just big cold damage, you know? And at this point at 6th level, Ray of Frost is becoming infinitely better than Eldritch Blast, because when you cast Ray of Frost on someone in the aura, they have a chance of just being freaking slow spelled for a turn. Much better than a plus charisma to damage, in my opinion. At 10th level, you get your next feature, Master of Cold. I didn't exactly want to give this subclass just automatic resistance to a bunch of damage, but I wanted to let them be able to do that so that they themselves could withstand the cold and maybe give them an extra ability to make them a bit more sustainable, just in case you did want to build that, you know, Hexblade-y build. So to start off with Master of Cold, make sure that you ignore resistance to cold damage so that you can be better at cold damaging. And then you also can become resistant to cold, bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage when it's dealt to you until the end of your next turn. So say you get hit, like big massive dude with 3 attack multi-attack that does 13 slashing a hit, you use a reaction upon taking the first hit, and now you're only taking half damage from all of that. Not all Warlocks are going to be in melee, but it's a good chance that any character in D&D will end up in melee at some point. So I think this is pretty useful, especially the override of cold resistance, because at 10th level, that's when people start getting resistant to things, even like 4th or 5th level. Sometimes you'll be dealing with immunity, which I didn't want them to be able to cancel out, because things have immunity for a reason. And finally, at 14th level, you get Cyclone of Chaos. Similar to like some stuff that the Archfey did, I wanted to give them a big old massive action that they can use to fuck everything up for a bit. So something to use outside of their very limited spell slots. At 14th level, they'll have a lot more, but still, it can be pretty disheartening to only have like 3 or 4 slots at that level. So you can throw a massive blizzard 1,000 feet away from you up to in a 100-foot radius, and it just makes, you know, all of the bad blizzard elements just happen. You conjure a blizzard. It lasts for a whole ass minute, and it's not concentration or anything, so it's not going to debilitate you in any sort of big way. Similar to the other feature where you make the aura, you can make your allies immune to all of the effects so that they can still run in and be very useful. So I wanted to give it a lot of different effects that can definitely do a lot of different things so that you're more incentivized to use this as your action. So it gets rid of open flames, not that good, but makes sense. Any water in the area freezes completely and then shatters in the next turn. If someone has a big water spell up, you can just drop this blizzard on them, that's fucking gone, right? Like free dispel magic, basically. Because this isn't even classing as a spell either, so like no one can counter it. It is also difficult terrain for any sort of movement. I specified swim here, even though it's very unlikely things are going to be swimming in here because, you know, no water, but I might as well. And if someone's climbing or flying in the area, they need to make a strength save against the DC from earlier for the aura, or they're falling down just completely to the floor. The area is all lightly obscured, and in a 30-foot sphere in the center of the big one, it is heavily obscured. So basically you can drop this on one big creature, and now they've lost all sense of direction, and it might give your allies a chance to just run in there, because again, they aren't affected by any of this. And finally, if anyone ends their turn in the aura, in the area, they're gonna take 6d6 cold damage. And considering that you can combine this with that aura, you could like send your tank in, right, into there. You can just chill on the outside, and then they're just permanently getting frozen and slowed and stuck in there even more than it already is. And this class is definitely fucking your enemies in the ass and making sure that they cannot move or do anything. But this stuff can all still be countered. People can just leave the areas that you make. Even though it's going to be slightly more difficult, things could teleport out, or perhaps just have a good enough fly speed to zoom, etc, etc. But I think that this is decent. It has not that many counters, which is good for a player, and it's more likely to work than not, unless you're fighting against specific creatures that are resistant to cold damage, etc, etc. And even then, if you're against enemies that are just immune to all of it, you've got your trusty Eldritch Blast, because let's be real, if a Warlock doesn't take it, then the player's trying to prove a point. In any case, thank you for watching this episode of Homebrew Kitchen. Hopefully this helped you a little bit coming up with what you wanted to do for your subclass, if you were ever to make one. If you have any questions about any sort of advice for any subclasses, I've made a few different ones in the past that I might talk about in the future, so either join our Discord or comment, and you can also like and subscribe. That's also an option. In any case, thank you all for watching. See you in the next one. Bye. There is a typo in this, I have just realised. Fuck! Anyway, I can't edit it now because I made it public. Ah! Worship is. She slowly just did that, but she can't reach far enough.
I have tiny arms. Okay, what shall I watch? The choice is...
Hentai.
No.
This is what I do to fix my hair.
And throw gang signs at me at the same time.